You are listening to the Two and Out CFL podcast, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
It's Travis Currah and Sheldon Jones coming out of division final weekend in the Canadian Football League. A lot to talk about, so let's just get to it right now. We learned this week, Sheldon, that the Calgary Stampeders, or at least the city of Calgary, and McMahon Stadium will play host to the 113th Grey Cup in 2026. Obviously, the decision is a decision that comes with a lot of criticism from CFL fans because it was only a few years ago when it was said that McMahon Stadium will not host another Grey Cup, but my, how things change, and we will be returning to Cowtown for the Grey Cup in 2 short years, Sheldon.
Yeah, I've never been to a Grey Cup at Calgary, so I guess I am excited to go there. I love Motel Village. It's a great place to stay on the cheap. So hopefully as soon as those rooms are available, I can snatch one up. But, it's the same thing when Regina gets a Grey Cup. Oh, there's not enough hotel rooms. They haven't had one for a while. It's time. The only other team that bid against them was Edmonton, so they obviously thought that Calgary had something better to offer, which is interesting considering the state of the stadium. But I think structurally it's fine, so that's the big thing.
They don't build them like they used to.
No. And if this means they better just have those freaking baked potatoes still going.
Let's go.
Yeah. So if they have that, then I'm a happy guy.
Well, and you mentioned it. It's not like it used to be where the Grey Cup was like just kind of awarded. Here you go. Mm-hmm. And we've seen it, and I've seen it a few times in my time going to the Grey Cup. This November is going to be my 15th, but the last time Vancouver hosted, I think they were like, we got nobody else. Here you go. And it was 3 years after they had hosted it the time before, and it really fell flat compared to the time they hosted it in 2011. But now, with the bidding process, it's teams bringing forward their best possible, presentation to the league, and that's why they got it. It's not like we're just saying, here you go, Calgary, you're up again. I really did think Edmonton would. We saw sort of those proposals for some work they're going to be doing to sort of modernize Commonwealth Stadium. So I thought that would definitely give them a leg up, but we know what's going on in Calgary. They're going to start doing all the construction with the new hockey rink there, but they've already done a ton of work at Stampede Park, and that's where the bulk of the week is going to be spent. They've already said that it's going to be centered around music. So there might be some pretty cool acts that Calgary's going to be able to bring into Stampede Park, the whole new convention center space. I think they're going to do a great job hosting the festival. We know that the stadium has its shortfalls. I would say when you're in your seat, it's great. When you're outside of your seat, it's not exactly the best. But my strategy in 2019 was get to my seat about an hour before kickoff, and I didn't leave until after the game, and I enjoyed my game day experience at McMahon Stadium a lot. So I know that they bring in porta potties to come up with the lack of bathrooms, and I know things like that, but hey, there are 7 other teams that decided not to bid for the Grey Cup in 2026. Calgary gave the best presentation, and they are getting the 113th edition of the game. As we stay with some CFL news, the RedBlacks parting ways mutually, they say, with defensive coordinator Baron Miles. Not exactly the biggest surprise after that Eastern semifinal and the big yards they were giving up against the Toronto Argonauts. I think we can agree that, the front of Ottawa's defense is strong, the D-line, the linebackers, but the secondary left some things to be desired, to say the very least, and they got exposed in their one playoff game this year.
Yeah, and I think with the rest of the positive stuff that happened with the RedBlacks this year, I think defensively they did let them down. So, it's the scapegoat, but I think in this case, differently than Calgary, I think this is probably the right scapegoat. And if they can find somebody else with maybe a different defensive philosophy that maybe can get some better secondary work in there, that would be good for Ottawa because, I think they had a positive season. They were a lot better than a lot of us fans and pundits thought they might be. So, necessary change, and hopefully they can build on in the offseason to find, I guess, as soon as the Grey Cup's over, then they can try to narrow down the search and see who might be the next defensive coordinator.
Before we get to the CFL games for the weekend, a lot of amateur football happening as well. There was a lot of football across Canada to enjoy. We'll start with the St. Clair Saints beating the Okanagan Sun 37-22 to win the CJFL Canadian Bowl, and then a pretty crazy weekend in U Sports as well. Laval winning the Dunsmore Cup after beating Montreal 22-17. So they're going to move on to the Mitchell Bowl to play the Regina Rams, who ended up beating the U of S Huskies at Griffith Stadium in Saskatoon to win the Hardy Cup 19-14. Those Rams 3-5 on the season, winning 2 road games to win the Hardy Cup. Now, obviously, a very tough test. Fans in Regina will be able to watch football at Mosaic Stadium because Saturday is when that game is going to happen, and Laval going to be in town to play the Rams. But quite the run, as I understand, is on the back of that U of R defense.
Yeah. I don't really have much to add about that. I didn't get a chance to watch the game, but underdogs, they were able to get those 2 road wins against the Bisons and the Huskies. So, Laval is a tough task. They're always a tough task. So, they're going to be underdogs again. And you know what? Sometimes, especially in football, when you get on some momentum, just look at the Montreal Alouettes last year, and you can see what can happen taking you all the way to a championship game. So, fingers crossed. As a Regina guy, I'm obviously going to be cheering for the Rams. While I'm in Vancouver on Saturday night or Saturday afternoon. We'll see if I can find a place to watch the game, but definitely pretty good for the University of Regina Rams program.
Now, Laurier ends up winning the Yates Cup after smashing Western 51-31. They're going to advance to the UTEC Bowl to play the Bishops Gators, who are undefeated on the year. They beat St. Mary's 25-22 in overtime as they remain undefeated. Tough task against the Laurier. That's going to be another interesting game. So it's Laurier, Bishops, and then Regina and Laval for the right to go to the Vanier Cup. But we now know who is going to play in the 111th Grey Cup in Vancouver, and that does start with those Toronto Argonauts, who got a 30-28 win over the Montreal Alouettes. But Sheldon, early on, it looked like it might look a lot like last year. The Alouettes were pressuring Chad Kelly, especially in that first half. And there were a few times when he made some shaky decisions, man, and it started with an interception from Najee Murray on the first possession of the game. But before the Owls offense was even able to get onto the field, he fumbles it back to the Argos. So a bullet dodged by Toronto. But man, Kelly made some shaky decisions, I thought, trying to get the ball out of there when he was under some heavy pressure.
Yeah, it was almost like you said, ghost of the East Final last year past coming back to get him. But that's the thing, though. Like Montreal, they just couldn't capitalize on any of the mistakes that were made. And they just gave the ball right back to the Argos. I think it was 5 turnovers in the first quarter between the two teams. Like, and it's not like really weather was a factor. Like I know it looked a little windy and the wind was kind of going both ways, but it's not like it was snowing or raining or anything like that. So kind of interesting as to why frying pan hands. I saw that on Twitter from Boshu Joe. So I don't know what was happening, but there was just some lucky bounces, like that one interception or the pick six that Toronto got, like that just fell right into his bread basket there. But it just in the playoffs, you have to be able to capitalize on errors, and Montreal just couldn't do that early on.
Well, because Montreal was making their share of errors. You brought up the pick six, but it started with Walter Fletcher, who I wondered if Montreal would try to keep Toronto off balance by running the ball. And as a whole, they did do that. And I don't think anybody really thought that Montreal would have much success running the ball. But they did. The problem was when Walter Fletcher has a big gain on the ground. This is early in the first quarter, like 10 minutes left in the first quarter. He has this big 20-yard run, and then he fumbles it. Now, Montreal's defense is still hanging in there. They're not allowing Toronto to get going because you brought it up. Walter Fletcher, D'Arcangelo, number 35, I wrote him down in my notes for Toronto. He did take a illegal block to the face later in the game, but he was causing problems for the Alouettes offense. It was clear that Walter Fletcher was bracing for the hit, but the ball hits him in the hands. It gets deflected to Benji Franklin, and for the second week in a row, Benji Franklin has a pick six. Alouettes already with 2 turnovers. It's 7-0 Argos with 6:47 left in the first quarter at that point. And you mentioned all the turnovers in the first quarter. Like, that ball was a hot potato. I don't know if teams were nervous or what it was, but that's not what these teams' strengths were or weaknesses were up to this point. They were pretty good at protecting the football.
Yeah, playoff nerves, just unlucky bounces. Yeah, I'm not sure what it was. It's just luckily for Toronto, they were able to get those bounces because up until, much later on in the game, their offense wasn't doing anything. It was their defense and, special teams that was able to put points on the board in the first half there up until closer to halftime.
Yeah, and clearly, Montreal's defense was playing with energy, and how can you not when there's an entire section of those horns going all game long? Like, they're relentless. I have to feel like a guy's arm has to be cramping by the fourth quarter. Like, they're actually putting some work in there. They must have some pretty impressive forearms by the end of this game.
Absolutely. I couldn't do that. There's no way. My hand is sore when I'm holding my phone in when I'm in bed, 2 minutes of that and my hand's sore. So yeah, this.
Getting to the end of the first quarter, Charleston Rambo had quite the opportunity. He almost made a catch to tie the game there, but the Alouettes had to settle for a field goal there. They settled for another field goal, so it's 7-6 with 13 minutes to go in the first half. And then the Alouettes start to get a little bit of momentum there. Isaac Adeyemi Berglund gets quite the sack on Chad Kelly. And then Sean Thomas Erlington gets into the game. He had a 38-yard carry. Like, man, Erlington, he got up some big yards in this one. He doesn't get the opportunities he used to get while he was in Hamilton. But he had a 38-yard touch. He had a 23-yard reception. I felt good for the guy being able to play back at home in Montreal, making some plays in front of his hometown. And that was a drive where the Alouettes were able to finish and get Keon Julian Grant the touchdown to take the lead. 13-7 Alouettes with about 9 minutes to go in the first half. And KJG ended up having a pretty good game for the Owls. 7 catches, 93 yards, and a touchdown. You got the sense, because I know Tyson Philpott told him, this is your year. Philpott did it last year, winning the Grey Cup in Hamilton against Winnipeg. Julian Grant, it looks like maybe he was poised for some special things, but either way, he had a good game here.
Yeah, quite a few players had a good game, and I loved when Sean Thomas Erlington had that big gain running down the field like this. He did not want to
Oh
fumble that
yeah.
ball, but yeah, like it. Montreal had all the momentum at that point, and they get the touchdown. They're up 13-7, and then a big play on the next Argos possession.
Yeah, Darnell Sankey picks off Chad Kelly. You talk about the momentum. Then Robbie Smith gets the sack. The Alouettes settle for 3. They're up by 9. 5:38 to go in the first half. Keep in mind, the Argos offense to this point has done nothing. Their touchdown came from the defense. Well, how fast things can change. Janarian Grant takes the next punt that the Alouettes had to the house. Now, to me, Sheldon, it kind of looked like Montreal was really focusing on not taking a no yards. But then, in doing that, they totally lost their way, lost their blocks, and Janarian Grant feasted on that. And now the Argos are down by 2 with 1:28 left in the half. Their offense hasn't done anything, but when your special teams and your defense scores, you are certainly in good shape.
Oh, yeah. And like when you work so hard to not get the no yards and then you give up those lanes, Julian Grant is not the guy that you can give an inch here. He's going to make that return. So unreal. And then, like, as we talked before, momentum, because momentum just it went on Toronto's side and it stayed for quite some time.
This was crazy. Like, the Alouettes, they make a big play to Cole Speaker. And there were a couple plays there where Tyler Sneed and Cole Speaker, they're very similar size. I might compare them to a Weston Dressler. These guys are breaking tackles. They're making things happen. But he fumbles the ball. It gets picked up by Witten McManus. It's Argos' ball. They're down by 2 with 35 seconds left in the half. DeMonte Coxey makes a massive catch. The Argos get to the 20. With time expiring, I thought the Argos were really going to try to go for a quick play here. And if the touchdown doesn't work, at least they'll be down with 1 second to go. Well, DeMonte Coxey, a game-time decision, makes a crazy one-handed catch on the sideline with the first half expiring. Montreal ended up challenging OPI. There was a little bit of hand fighting there. It didn't work. 21-16 Argos at the half. I feel like this is one of the moments where if that didn't work, we might be looking at this game a little bit differently. I know the second half had some things going on too, but to get a touchdown like that at the end of the half, you want to talk about momentum? A touchdown from all three phases of your game in one half? That's crazy.
Yeah, it's a dagger, especially when you're a road team and you get a touchdown on the last play of the first half. That just sucks the air out of the stadium. Like, there was no air horns playing at halftime. It just takes it away, and then it's like the pendulum was already swinging in Toronto's favor before that, but that just made it swing even faster. And then they get off to they keep it going in the second half.
Yeah, they keep rolling in the Double Blues' favor. Jake Ceresna gets a sack to end Montreal's first drive. But Joseph Zima pins the Argos in deep. And you're thinking, okay, let's see what they can do to get out of this hole. Well, they hit Janarian Grant for a 47-yard gain. Grant hadn't been involved in the offense since September. Clearly, the Alouettes were not expecting it here. That was a game changer here. I don't think the drive ended up in a touchdown for the Argos, but when you got them pinned deep like that, you have to try to maintain that field position, and Montreal didn't.
Yeah. When you have a guy like Janarian Grant in space, and the ball is thrown as good as it was, he's not going to drop that, and he's going to take it. And yeah, when you're starting deep in your zone, your goal is not to score on that drive. Your goal is to get to within get a couple first downs. So if you're punting, you're not punting from your end zone. And they were able to do that, and impressive.
Yeah. Now, that Argo drive, or a Argo drive in the third quarter, ended up in a field goal. So they got an 8-point lead with 5:50 left in the third quarter. Can I just say, when Chad Kelly first took over the offense in Toronto, and I'm talking, last year, like, he would come in on short yardage and try to draw the defense offside. Well, I feel like I've seen the Argos try this, like, 12 times this year, and the defenses don't bite. They tried it twice in this game, and I'm sure the D-line could just lay down and take a nap. Like, it's just not working. Well, if they did that, maybe they would actually run a play, but it's just not working anymore for the Argos.
No, but then Montreal does go offside when they are hurrying to go 3rd and 1. Yeah, so it seems like they're better off just to hurry to the line, and then maybe if the team's not ready, they'll actually get them to go offside.
Now, this was another big moment. The Alouettes kept turning the ball over. Cody Fajardo makes this magical play. I think that they were trying to sell it as just improvising, but I really just thought it was a screenplay that Fajardo hit Sean Thomas Erlington at the last possible second on, and then he makes a big play to Cole Speaker, but Cody Fajardo on the next play, he takes off and runs, he trips over the 20, and then the next play, Jake Ceresna forces the Cody Fajardo fumble, and who's there to pick it up again but Wynton McManus. This guy is involved in every play. His first fumble recovery, he was blitzing at the line of scrimmage. They make the big play. He turns around, he jogs in, it gets fumbled, he just picks it up. This guy is he's a football magnet. It's crazy.
Yeah, as a fan, it's just impressive to see how many ways he can find his way to get into the play, even when you think he's out of it. He's a hell of a player.
Then, Kadeem Carey with a massive gain. Suddenly, they're in Montreal's end, 34-yard line with 2.5 minutes to go in the third quarter. And then something that might define Grey Cup week and could have changed the rest of this game. Chad Kelly goes down. And it looked innocent, man.
Mm-hmm.
But when he tried to walk away from that and he sat down, his ankle looked like floppy to me. And because Wynton McManus went down to a cramp earlier, that's what I originally kind of thought was happening here. Pretty serious injury here.
Well, and I thought it was too, because I didn't notice the his leg flop a little bit. I did notice that on the replay when I looked again, but he say what you want about Chad Kelly, he took that like a champ. It didn't look like his tibia was snapped.
Well, I said that to
his
my
face
wife.
expression was just stone. It's just I was just like, hey, he's got a cramp. That's all it was. It was like, he's got a cramp.
I don't know if he was in shock or what, and I kind of wondered if him getting up might have made it worse.
When he tried to put some weight on that, and you could that's when I did see the leg move a little bit, and I was like, oof. But I'm sitting at my buddy Matt's house, I was like, he's got a cramp, whatever. And then I see all the training staff come in, and I was like, okay, Chad Kelly, he needs 6 guys for a cramp. But then because it took a while for TSN to actually show a replay. But then you definitely figured out that it was a lot more serious than we all thought.
So Matthew Shinetti said broken ankle. Then Dave Naylor ended up reporting broken tibia, in surgery tonight as we speak, probably.
Yeah.
In Montreal.
Yeah.
And then the fights start on Twitter. We don't need to get into that right now. And maybe we'll talk about the situation because this is crazy. This is a situation Ryan Dinwiddie is very familiar with. This goes back to 2007 when he was thrust into action after Winnipeg's starting quarterback, Kevin Glenn, broke his arm in the Eastern Final. However, Toronto's backup quarterback, Nick Arbuckle, has a little bit more experience than Ryan Dinwiddie did at that time. So after the Kelly injury, Arbuckle comes in. The Argos do take an 11-point lead, 27-16, with 13 seconds to go in the third quarter. And then maybe you got the sense that Montreal might fight back and get into this thing. Austin Mack gets a touchdown. Toronto gets a sack on the 2-point conversion, so it's 27-22 Toronto with under 12 minutes to go. And then, man, Kadeem Carey, he drops the ball on second and long, or forces a second and long. I really thought that was definitely a catchable ball, and I thought, this momentum is now swinging in Montreal's way again. But I'll say this, like James Letcher Jr., he had some big returns in this one, not Janarian Grant taking it to the house, but Theodric Hansen on the Toronto Argonauts, number 90. That guy's all over the place on special teams. There was a couple plays when he's probably 2.5 times James Letcher's weight.
Yeah.
And he's making these plays on this guy. It was pretty impressive to watch.
Yeah, I always love taking a special look at the guys who are going like balls to the wall on special teams, because that's my favorite kind of player. Like the guys who don't take a play off, they get down there, they want to get that big tackle. So it's great to see how into the special teams he is.
Now, there was a moment when, Montreal's moving the ball. Charleston Rambo gets hit. The Argos challenge that Cody was over the line of scrimmage. Not really close at all. What was closer was him being that far from his heel stepping out of bounds, but it did look like there was some green there. But then the Argos just kept making the plays that they needed to make. DeMonte Coxey just looked like a menace for the Alouettes trying to tackle. Janarian Grant got on the field and he had another carry, picking up some big yards. And Nick Arbuckle was making some great throws on second and long. He's hitting Mackay Polk. He put them back up 8 with a field goal. 4 minutes to go there. But then Walter Fletcher scores a touchdown, about 2 minutes left. The Owls are down by 2 because Cody Fajardo got picked off on that 2-point conversion. And then Arbuckle, like I said, on second and long, like that catch, that throw to David Ungerer to extend the drive. And then was that Tyrese Beverette taking the pass interference at the end of the game. Toronto obviously gets the massive gain and they win 30-28.
Yeah, that's just frustration. That's you could tell that and he even came up like putting his hands in the air, but like he ran the guy over before the ball was there. Yeah, so it's a no chance. But like I think even, it's got to be tough when you see the other team's star player go down and then you can't get it done. You can't make stops on defense when it's the cold backup coming in. So understands frustration, but you can't. You got to be smarter in that situation. You can't touch the guy because I don't think he was going to catch that ball. And if he makes it, if he just makes a good defensive play, then Montreal still would have a chance.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this remains to be seen, but Nick Arbuckle completely written off from the CFL. Like
100%.
After his struggles in Ottawa, and then at this point, maybe the conversation changes depending on what happens next weekend. This could be the pickup of the year, obviously.
CFL's Joe Flacco.
Yeah, like Nick Arbuckle, very familiar, we know, with Ryan Dinwiddie. They go back to their time in Calgary, and that's when Arbuckle had his greatest success. And he ended up becoming a very popular free agent. We've seen this with many quarterbacks in the CFL over the years. Do I need to mention James Franklin, who... and there's been these guys. And then it didn't work out for Nick Arbuckle when he left. And now he's going to be starting in the 111th Grey Cup against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Now, of course, he feels pressure, but at the same time, what does he have to lose? Nobody expected him to be in this part, and I would say the Bombers have very limited film on him at this point. It's very interesting.
He's got one game to go out there and get a contract for next year. He wins the Grey Cup, and, like it or not, he becomes a starting quarterback somewhere next year.
This is wild.
Yep.
I gotta say, I actually really think that the broadcasts on both games were really good. Like, the extra cameras, they had extra people on the sideline, the extra microphones. Mm-hmm. Man, we got a clip of Ryan Dinwiddie going to Chad Kelly when he's down on the field and choking up, like crying, and just saying, "Keep fighting, Chad." And then the audio that we've got from the quarterbacks, I don't know. I thought there were some really cool moments that happen on these broadcasts. We've seen the coordinators up in the booth, Henoch on the field in Winnipeg, Barker on the field in Montreal. I actually thought, man, this was pretty cool.
Yeah, I enjoyed everything but Barker. No, I thought it was great. The playoffs, I guess, do deserve a little bit extra better presentation, but it'd be nice if we could get that, all the time. But hot mic, and there's a lot of hot mic moments in the Bombers Riders game. Mike O'Shea got a really good one near the end of the game.
Well, Arbuckle, he had the mic in his face and he swore after the game. I don't know if you saw that.
I missed that. No, I missed that. I saw a tweet about it, but I missed the clip. But yeah, and you know what? I'm completely fine with that. These players are human, and emotion comes out, and no one's going to get hurt with a 4-letter word every now and then. So I love it. Grey Cup, I'm sure, will be the same. Or if not, even better. If they could get just pylon cameras, the NFL's had them for years. Let's get some pylon cameras. But other than that, great job, TSN. Great job. Now
these Montreal Alouettes, they are eliminated from the playoffs. I picked Toronto to win, but just considering the way that the season started for the Alouettes, and that just goes to show you that this season is a marathon. It's certainly not a sprint, and the way it came down for them in the Eastern Final, of course, it was a competitive game. Is it different if Tyson Philpott is in there and they have a full strength offense kind of thing? But going into next year, what do you see the Alouettes focusing on and changing? I still think they're in pretty good shape going into 2025. I do wonder what's going to happen with Davis Alexander, the backup quarterback in Montreal. Is he going to be taking a bit of a payday to go elsewhere, and maybe he feels like he's got a better opportunity to start elsewhere? I do wonder if maybe the Alouettes are going to try to get a better running game going. I know Walter Fletcher is dangerous. He can break plays and things like that, but he was definitely more of a threat in the receiving game, and that's why he led the CFL in yak in 2024. Yeah. But maybe they don't need to run the ball. Clearly, it just came down to turnovers, man, and they were on the right side of that last year. Not the same this year.
Yeah, I think they have a really good core, and I think they're just going to look to build on that. I don't know if Jason Moss really needs a better running back or or more of a running game. I think the way that they utilized Fletcher this year was really good. Maybe they try to see if they can get Eugene Lewis back.
I think he was in Montreal for this game, and he posted on X, should I be in the crowd and participate? I don't know if he did, but
well, and he's pretty much insinuated he's going to the market and wants to see what he can get. So maybe a return there. But when you already have Tyson Philpott and Austin Mack and Speaker and Julian Grant, I don't necessarily know if unless they're willing to let one of those guys go to get Eugene Lewis back. But I still think that Montreal is a really good team, and I think if some of those early bounces went another way, it could have been a completely different game because Toronto's offense wasn't doing anything until their special teams and their defense were able to score majors and kind of get them rolling. So I don't think anyone in Montreal should really hang their head too low. They had a really good season. They built on a Grey Cup winning season last year, and I think they're still one of the best teams in the East, and I think they can be for seasons to come.
Cody Fajardo went 27 of 42, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Walter Fletcher did have 8.6 yards a carry, 8 carries for 69 yards, Sheldon.
Nice.
Sean Thomas Erlington, the big 38-yard run and the 23-yard reception, but Keon Julian Grant still the leading receiver for the Alouettes with 93 yards. As for Toronto, Chad Kelly went 11 of 22, 182 yards, 2 interceptions and a touchdown before suffering the injury. Nick Arbuckle went 5 of 8 for 73 yards. Kadeem Carey had 7.7 yards a carry, 12 carries, 92 yards, and the leading receiver for those Argos was DeMonte Coxey, 105 yards on 5 catches and a touchdown, but Mackay Polk still had 72 yards receiving on the day. If I do look at the defense, like we said, fumble recoveries from Wynton McManus, 2 of them for him. Kadeem Carey even recovered one on the Najee Murray interception on the first drive of the game. A couple knockdowns from Royce Metier and Deshaun Amos. He had a big play that he broke up, and the leading tackler for the Argos was Isaac Darkangelo. He was all over the field for that team. The leading tackler for the Montreal Alouettes. Actually, there was a few guys that had 4. Tyrese Beverette, Dylan Wynn had 4 himself there. Darnell Sankey had 4 and a knockdown. And Marc-Antoine Dequoy actually had 2 knockdowns, as did Wesley Sutton for the Montreal Alouettes. Now we go to Winnipeg for the Western Final, where the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are looking to go to the Grey Cup for the 5th consecutive season. And that's just what they did. 38-22 the final. It was just an old-fashioned ass-kicking right from the start. Ontario Wilson, on Winnipeg's first possession, he got hit in the hands. It would have been a tough catch. He probably would have liked that one back. The Bombers end up punting, but then the Riders, they can't really get rolling with their offense. And then that's when the Bombers get rolling. Zach Collaros had a nice run to get a first down with about 6 minutes left in the first quarter. And then they hit Kenny the King Lawler with a 31-yard touchdown, his first of the day. Sheldon, I'm going to cut to a clip from our Western Final preview earlier this week. Now, Kenny the King Lawler has 100 yards in 3 of his last 4 games. We know he is going to be a problem for whoever is going to be covering him in the Saskatchewan secondary, but it will be can Collaros have the time to get him the ball? And we've seen Corey Mace's defense hasn't really been big on the pressure. You know what I mean? They haven't really, that hasn't been their philosophy. So, Sheldon, doesn't that kind of define what happened in this game? Honestly, the problem was that no one was covering number 89 in blue. I know 89 in green and white had several receptions in this game as well. But Kenny Lawler and Zach Collaros had their way with the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and it started in the first quarter.
Yeah, it was it was amazing to watch, to be honest. As a Rider fan, crushing, but Amari Henderson had a rough game, and it's not his first rough game, so he's gonna be thinking about that one all off season, and who knows if he's even brought back. I could kind of give or take that, but he had a rough night. There looked like there was some breakdowns on the zone defense that they continuously call. Do you remember that one time when they blitzed? I do.
It was a 2nd and 10 in the fourth quarter. They waited till one of the last moments to do it.
Yeah. So, as a Rider fan, increasingly frustrating, just the fact that if you would think the team, like when Corey Mace, you would think he would have watched when Toronto played Winnipeg and saw how much pressure they put on Zach Collaros, and saw what that caused to happen. But apparently, I don't know, Corey Mace, rookie head coach, he's up for coach of the year, had a couple of very questionable calls in this game. But all in all, a really good season. But hopefully in this offseason, I hope he looks to kind of, change up his philosophy of just a soft zone, because teams, they were killing it. They were getting yards like crazy all season. I know there wasn't a lot of touchdowns given up all season, and I know, when you're plus 27 or 28 or whatever it was in the turnover differential, like far be it for me to, critique that, but that didn't happen tonight. And, frustrating as it is, I just need to hang my hat on the fact that the Riders are much improved. They had a really good season, and this one stinks tonight, but I think very positive step for Rider fans.
Now, Winnipeg, they played zone a lot of the night as well, but the difference was in the fourth quarter, like they're rushing 3 and they're getting to the quarterback. You can do whatever you want in the secondary if you're going to be rushing 3 and getting to the quarterback. So, after Kenny's first touchdown, the Riders answer with a 2-and-out, and then the next drive, it's another touchdown for Kenny Lawler, who ended the day with, let's pull up his numbers here, 4 catches, but 177 yards. Whoa.
A little bit more than nice. One thing I did forget to mention, though, and this isn't sour grapes, so please don't take it as that, but these refs were letting them play. On that first Kenny Lawler touchdown, there was definitely holding, and that's what led to it. But again, like I said, they're letting them play, and I'm okay with that. We saw the challenge in the first game where they thought it was offensive pass interference and they didn't call it. It was a tight coverage and they were hand fighting. So I'm okay with them letting things go.
I guess I'll say this: I wish that they'd let them go a little bit more in the regular season as well.
Yeah.
I know it's the playoffs. We've seen the old philosophy where the NHL rulebook is this tall in the regular season, and then in the playoffs it's like 2 sentences. But the same goes here, I think.
Oh yeah, for sure. They were letting them play. I think both teams only had 3 penalties each in this game, so it's good when the refs aren't involved. It's just sometimes when you see Glenn Suter pointing out, oh, what a great block. This is the block that made Zach Collaros be able to find Kenny Lawler, and it's just clearly showing Stanley Bryant holding. Like, it's kind of frustrating as a Rider fan to see that. But again, I'm not upset that it wasn't called. I'm glad that they let them play. It's just a little bit... Glenn Suter had a bad day today. I don't really like calling out the Glenn Suter hate, but I was getting pretty frustrated with him trying to say or trying to show the things that he was saying were correct when the visual evidence was not showing that. He does it a lot. But anywho,
on the next drive, the Riders end up getting a PI on Evan Holm, who, by the way, for Winnipeg was all over the field. He seemed to be involved in every play, positive or negatively, for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Now, that is a case where it may have been a good pass interference to take, because when he fell, he kind of reached out and tripped Kian Schaefer-Baker. If he doesn't do that, the green and white 89 is taking that one to the house, and it's 14-7.
Yeah, as long as he could have got a squeeze on it. We saw, I think it was the next play, Keyshawn Johnson almost made a miraculous catch. Almost. Yeah,
that was... I think that's another one.
A little overthrown.
Yeah. It was. He bobbled it about 4 times. And it was at that point when, the Riders settled for 3 points. It's 14-3 Bombers at the end of the first quarter there. But, that's one that Keyshawn Johnson definitely has the ability to make. It would have been a tough one, of course. But I bet you if he had another chance at it, he probably makes it.
Yeah, but I will say, at least when he was bobbling it, that last bobble made it go around his head and in front of him instead of behind, because there was 2 Bombers there that were waiting to just pick that off. So tough one for him, but he, again, another guy who had a great season and coming into the CFL, technically not a rookie due to his NFL playing time, but certainly his first year in the CFL was an outstanding one.
On the next drive for the Bombers, Caleb Sanders gets a blocked punt for the Roughriders. Now, Caleb Sanders, I thought, had a pretty big tackle on Vernon Adams Jr. in the West semifinal. Coming up big here with the blocked punt. They take over at the Winnipeg 25-yard line early in the second quarter, but they settle for 3. And that, when you're on the 25-yard line, that is rough. So, 14-6 with 12:40 to go left in the first half. And the reason settling for 3 there was so difficult is because the next drive, it's 2nd and 1, and Terry Wilson, the short yardage quarterback for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, just bounces outside and has a 48-yard rush, and then it's a touchdown for Nick Dembski on the next play, and the Bombers go up 21-6. So the Riders would take 2 small steps forward with field goals, and the Bombers come back with a dagger to go up again by 15.
Yeah, and again, that's momentum, and that's not capitalizing on momentum, because when that punt happened, if they would have been able to capitalize with a major there, that would have taken the wind out of the Bomber fans' sails a little bit. When you give up a punt block and then you hold the team to a field goal when they're starting on like your 20-some yard line, that's like a win for the defense. That is going to get the crowd pumped back up, and then especially capitalizing that on the next series with a touchdown. Honestly, like that's probably I know that was really early, but that's when I was like, okay, this isn't the Riders' night.
Yeah, I felt like it was going to be one of those 51-6 Banjo Bowl games or something like that. It wasn't quite like that. But let's talk about the Rider defense for a little bit at this point. I found that to start the game, they probably thought Winnipeg was going to give them a heavy dose of Brady Oliveira. And Winnipeg didn't do that. And they started their high-flying offense, and they hit Kenny the King. They got 2 touchdowns. So then the Riders kind of adjusted and focusing on Kenny the King. And then they start hitting him with Dembski and Oliveira. They just could never get their feet under them in this game.
Yeah, no, this was a veteran coach, a veteran offensive coordinator. He game planned. Buck Pierce and Mike O'Shea, they had a hell of a game plan for the Riders, and they capitalized on it beautifully. Like, this is Winnipeg's MO. Like they often do this. They often make you think that they're gonna just stuff you down the throat or stuff you with Brady Oliveira, but Brady Oliveira's there. He's there for the fourth quarter. He's there to just grind the ball out at the end of the game and slap his head. It's not as annoying as Andrew Harris, but I love
Andrew Harris
that
does
Brady.
the thing when he would get tackled and then jog for another 40 yards.
I could not stand that. But Brady, he slaps his head, and that's fine. I love Brady because he rescues dogs in the off season, and so I will never, say a real bad thing about Brady Oliveira. But he does what he does, and he does it well. And if you key in on him, then they just are able to go over top of you with all of their weapons, and usually it's Nick Dembski who's getting all the Lawler yards against the Riders. So, good, kudos to Kenny the King, man. What a game. And, you're lucky you had Amari Henderson watching you and not Roland Milligan, I think. But
why?
I digress.
I understand that a team wants to stick with their game plan and their philosophy, but after after two, what are we doing?
I
understand maybe they don't want to play man to man, but I don't know. It felt kind of stubborn and a little bit naive not to kind of focus in on Lawler. I mean, and if you're not getting pressure on Zach, he's gonna find somebody every time.
But they did then focus in on Lawler, and then that's what I know it was a 1st and a 5, and it was just a quick little pass to Dembski for that touchdown after Wilson got that huge run. But you could see on the replay that they thought the ball was going to Lawler, and so they crashed on him, and then it went to Dembski. And so again, that's just that's a coordinator who recognizes they've been able to exploit what they can, and now they're going to capitalize on that. And I think it is a lot of times coaches want to make themselves right, want to prove that their game plan is a solid one, and so maybe that's why they're not willing to go away from it so quickly. And maybe Corey Mace just doesn't think that his defensive backs are quick enough to be able to hang in a man defense. I don't know. Maybe that's what it is, but you had 2 all-CFL players in your defensive backfield, Marcus Sayles, Roland Milligan Jr. You had an all-CFL, CJ Rivas, I think, was all-CFL. You have these players who they still played stellar, but Jesus Christ. But
I see kitty ears poking in.
Yeah, the cat jumped up and took me. But if you don't think that your players can hang, man to man, you have to know that players like Zach Collaros, they're going to be able to exploit that zone and exploit it. He did.
Well, and you got to think those guys want the chance to go one-on-one with the best. If they get beat, they get beat.
Yeah.
But I think they're competitors, and they want the chance.
Yeah.
And it was actually at that point in the game when I thought that Mark Nealer and the Rider offense was going to get dimensional, and they kind of did for a little bit. And Winnipeg just pinned their ears back. They got a sack on Trevor Harris, and then the next drive, Brady gets a 20-yard gain on the ground, and then Malik Carney actually had a really big pass breakup on 2nd and 8. Then the next drive, and I actually thought this was a pretty big moment in the game, especially when we compare it to what happened in the fourth quarter. AJ Ouellette gets a big run, and the Riders are down at the Winnipeg 36-yard line. It's 3rd and 2 with 2:37 to go in the first half. They're down 12. I thought that they should have strongly considered going for it there. And then what they did instead was at the beginning of the fourth quarter, it's 3rd and 4 on their own 24-yard line. And the Rider offense has no momentum. And there's 12 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. They go for it. Winnipeg gets the ball, and they score a touchdown to go up 38-16. So if you compare those two gambling, moments, I think the one in the first half. I know you can look back. They might have screwed it up, but that was the one to take the chance on.
Well, I was screaming, internally screaming, because I was quite quiet at that point. I was internally screaming to go for it then, and then, later on, obviously I wasn't happy with the choice, but desperation is a stinky cologne, and they were desperate at that time, and I think they knew that they had to do something, but. You know what? We need to give props to Adam Korsak for his fake punt, which apparently was not called, and that is even crazier. The intestinal fortitude on that man to call your own fake in a playoff game. My hat is off to him, because that is a time where I was looking around the team and I was like, we need to fake this punt, we need to fake it, and then they did, and that was pretty awesome. I like to see more of that, more fake punts, please.
I agree. Well done to Enoch Mwamba for getting that information on the sideline from the Riders. But before the half, Saskatchewan kicks that field goal. Winnipeg gets the ball back, and then they kick another field goal of their own to go up 24-9 going into the break. But then the Riders came out in the second half with a great drive. They go 77 yards on 8 plays. A.J. Ouellette dives over the pile, and they get a touchdown. And they kick the extra point. So they're only down 8 at the beginning of the second half. They were in this thing, man. They were in it. They get the ball back. And it was on that drive that Adam Korsak actually faked that punt, because it would have been a 2-and-out. A big difference from 2-and-out to scoring a touchdown. So you thought maybe Saskatchewan had some momentum there. So that was a good way to start the second half for the Riders. And then the Bombers go 2-and-out. But the Riders just couldn't quite get the momentum going again after that, because Carrick Wheatfall makes that big catch. 8 minutes left in the third quarter. They get a big run from Brady Oliveira. You can see the Rider defense is getting tired. He's dragging guys at this point. And then that was the hat trick for Kenny the King Lawler. Another breakdown in defense. It's 31-16 Winnipeg with 5:45 left in the third. Doable to come back from, of course. But I think we've talked about it enough. Like, how do you not make the adjustments? I feel like you got to have somebody on 89 at that point. Speaking of 89, I think it was late in the third quarter, the Roughriders starting a possession on their own 7-yard line. And it looked like they're just starting to lose that field position battle. And when you're losing that field position battle and you're on the road in Winnipeg, that is a tall mountain to climb. Now, I did say last week on the show, I got called out on YouTube that I said Princess Auto Stadium against the Bombers in the West Final is the tallest mountain in Winnipeg. And old man shouting at clouds, I think his name's George, he says, Riding Mountain National Park in Manitoba. Do not disrespect that place. You're correct. It is totally on my bucket list to see that place in Manitoba. And I also like to go to Wapusk National Park in Manitoba to see the polar bears. But we will get back to the football game there, because the Riders backed up against their own end zone. 7-yard line. Kean Schaefer-Baker makes the big catch on 2nd and 10. But the nose of the football hit the ground, even though I actually, sometimes I don't know which way they're going to call these things. It's not like the ground helped him make the catch, but it did touch the ground, and I think that took a lot of wind out of Saskatchewan's sails, because Winnipeg starts their next drive in Saskatchewan territory on the 50.
Yeah, it's like you say, you don't know which way they're gonna go. But yeah, as soon as I saw the replay, I was like, oh yeah, they're gonna overturn this because it touched the ground.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
It was a hell of a catch. It still was a catch. He caught the ball. It was just the ground helped it a little bit, maybe, I guess. But, Harris was trying to fit the ball in a lot of tight pockets. And unfortunately for the Riders, it didn't always happen. But the Bombers, and again, this is the refs letting him play. They were covering really tight. They were not letting to get any separation, and when the ball was coming, they were ball hawks. So kudos to them. Really good game plan.
Yeah, and you could tell the noise was getting to the Riders, in the fourth quarter, and then more defenders on that Bomber defense started making plays. I think Willie had a couple knockdowns. He was causing trouble for Trevor Harris. Cramdy got a big sack on second down late in the game. Evan Holm broke up a Keyshawn Johnson third down gamble touchdown late in the game. Like I said, 31 was all over the field for Winnipeg. And that was after Lucky Whitehead ended up fumbling the ball that Roland Milligan ended up recovering with over 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter. If they had things rolling, of course, it would have been possible. We saw what Ottawa did to Toronto a few weeks back. But yeah, when Saskatchewan went for it from their own 24, and it's 31-16, Brady gets the next carry. He gets the next two carries. They're in the end zone, and that they end up taking a 3-score lead at that point. Sam Emelis did score a late touchdown to make it a 38-22 final for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, but I think the big story was that the Saskatchewan Roughriders, I don't want to say that I think they thought that they were okay because they could stop the run, but they didn't stop the run and they didn't stop the pass. And Winnipeg just came in with a game plan that threw them off balance from the opening kickoff, and that was it. Oliveira had 6 yards a carry, 20 carries for 119 yards. Wilson had 51 yards. We talked about that 48-yarder. And then, it was just on display that the Bombers had been in this situation many, many times before, and the Riders hadn't. And once they got down, you could tell that there were differences there. So that brings the Bombers to the 111th Grey Cup in Vancouver to play the Toronto Argonauts. So you talk about 2007. The Bombers were on the side, the team that lost their starting quarterback in the East Final. Now they're in the Saskatchewan position of playing the team that lost their starting quarterback in the East Final. Interesting leading in to that game. I still think Toronto's defense can give Zach Collaros troubles, and they have many times over the last few seasons, so it could happen again. But I want to ask you about the Riders. I know there's finger pointing. I get it. It always happens in Rider Nation. I didn't listen to the post-game call-in show. I'm sure somewhat Corey May's fired, not only because he's the head coach, but he's the DC. I'm assuming that probably has been said a few times. There will be fingers pointed, I think, at the rushing game. AJ Ouellette got half of his yards on one carry. Other than that, he had 9 carries for about 25 yards, 10 for 51 when we include the 26-yarder. But Trevor Harris, he protected the ball. I don't think he was bad in this one, but age starts to come into play. Do you think he'll be back in green and white in 2025?
I don't know. I think he definitely has an unfinished business mindset. I think he's been so close to, getting that Grey Cup a few times, and he definitely wants to get that. I think these last two seasons in Riderville have both had extended injuries that kind of taken him away from it. So I think you have to talk about that. But, I don't think he's going to have that long to actually make up his mind here, because I think the Riders are going to want that decision pretty quickly, because the Vernon Adams sweepstakes starts in a week. They said after Grey Cup is when they're going to start to get that process started. So I think, Trevor needs to decide what he's going to do, what's best for him. I think he's still capable. I think the Riders probably would have him back. But if he has any inkling that he's not in it for, much longer, if he thinks that Father Time has caught up to him, then hopefully he lets the Riders know quickly so that they can decide whether they want to try to get Vernon Adams, or maybe try to, lure, Trey Ford away from Edmonton, see about Davis Alexander. There's options. But, I don't think it's the worst idea for him to come back, because I think he's still playing at a high level. Like, outside of this game, I think he was probably the best quarterback in the last third of the season. It's just, he's always going to have that reputation that he's amazing between the 20s, and they can't seal the deal. And again, today, they had 3 field goals, and a couple of them were really short field goals that you would hope that they would get majors from. So, long story short, I don't know, but hopefully it's clear within the next week or so.
AJ Ouellette did sign a 2-year contract at the beginning of the year, a highest paid American running back in the CFL.
He's going to be back. I think, I think Corey Mace is pretty loyal to his players. I think that's how it's going to be, and he'll be back. And I know there's a lot of Rider fans who are going to say that, the production didn't wasn't there for the amount of money he was paid. I think early on he had that nagging injury that you could tell was bothering him for a couple of games before he actually shut it down there for a while. And he's been a very good blocking back when he's been in there, and that's something that goes unnoticed by a lot of fans. I like to kind of attribute it back to how, when Micah Johnson first signed with the Riders, he didn't get a bunch of sacks because he was getting double teamed all the time, but he was plugging up the middle, and he was doing his job, and maybe he wasn't getting the glamorous stats, but I think he'll definitely be back. We'll have to see if they have Armstead back, if they're gonna do a tandem, if they're gonna keep that going or what. But I do think that AJ Ouellette is the perfect player, the perfect kind of guy that Corey Mace is trying to build his team. A lunch pail guy, a guy who's gonna give his entire body on the line. He's gonna do everything he can to win. And so, there's going to be a lot of fans who maybe want to move on from him, but I definitely think he'll be back.
Mario Alford's contract was only 1 year in January of 2024. Was not super for much of the year, including that Labor Day loss against Winnipeg. He made a pretty big blunder, and that may be, I don't know, if you want to boil it down to one play and one day, the West Final could have been in Regina. But
yeah.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda. Those Bombers started the season 2-6. They won the West, and now they are in the Grey Cup. And there is Chloe the cat.
Hey, Chloe. Yeah, I know. Hey, go away.
If she's trying to comfort you.
She is. There goes my Diet Coke all over my lap. Wonderful.
Well, I hope it's not fried at the end of the show, buddy.
What a day. What a night.
Oh, no. I will quickly go through the stats and we'll let Sheldon put his laptop in a bowl of rice. But
oh, no, it just went on my lap. It didn't go on my laptop.
Oh,
it just went
okay.
on my lap. We're good.
Kean Schaefer-Baker, 162 yards on 12 catches. Sam Emelis wasn't in sync with Trevor Harris. 4 catches, 11 targets, 58 yards for him. If we go to the Bombers, we talked about Kenny the King. We talked about Oliveira, but Zach Collaros, 19 of 26, 301 yards and 4 touchdowns. Trevor Harris, 25 of 44, 283 with 1 touchdown. We look at the leading tackler for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. That is Reddick Cramdy, 9 tackles on the day. Willie Jefferson had 2 knockdowns. Evan Holm had 4 knockdowns for the Bombers. If we look to the Riders, CJ Avery, 10 tackles in this one. And didn't 9 of them come in the first half? It was pretty crazy. 6 tackles overall for Jameer Thurman. The matchup is set for the 111th Grey Cup on the West Coast. It is the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. It is the Toronto Argonauts. A lot of stories to go through leading up to the big game and the end of the 2024 CFL season. I'm Travis Currah. He is Sheldon Jones. Take care of yourself and each other. We will talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.